Hello! I made a shawl design. Yeah, another one. Surprise, surprise. And I think it's my favorite one. Don't tell the others. This is Quadrangle Spires. I love this shawl so much because it is so big. This is definitely into schlenket territory with those self-striping yarns mixed with a solid main color. This is more of a rectangular shape overall, but it has these like pointed wingtips. And I love knitting this shawl because you don't have to focus too much on constantly changing colors. It uses spin cycle yarns, which do the color changing work for you. So each shawl, I featured 6 different spin cycle colorways. So you could do a rainbow of different spin cycle self-striping yarns, or you could stick more in one palette with purples or blues and greens. So 6 skeins of the spin cycle are combined with 3 skeins of Westwool bicycle, and that is the frame. So you have this solid frame striped with those self-striping marled spin cycle colors, and it has a really nice squish to it. What I like about Westwool and spin cycle is they're a little more on the plump side of fingering weight, and Westwool's non-superwash, so it gives you that woolly structure to the fabric. So it's nice and drapey, but it has that structural squish, if that makes sense. It's not too slinky and flimsy feeling. So this shawl begins in the center with a quadrangle. The quadrangle is this. It's a made-up word, and it means quad angles, quadrangles of shapes. So there's 4 triangles that are knit one at a time in the center, and you pick up stitches from one section to the next. So the entire shawl is knit seamlessly. There's no sewing, except for maybe the cast-on tip and the bind-off tip of yarn. So you seamlessly knit it together and pick up stitches. And those smooth architectural columns are achieved by not doing something. You're just slipping stitches and not knitting them to get those fat slip stitch columns. So I continued that theme from the quadrangle into the spires. You pick up stitches with those little fun West Knits yarn overs and continue with these spire wingtips on each corner of the center quadrangle. So the spires you can knit as long as you want, so you can really easily customize the length of your shawl if you want it to be a little bit shorter, but they're really wide and really dramatic, architecturally angled wingtips for both halves of the quadrangle spires. So this is a really fun project to mix that main color with contrast colors, and you can do some really wild things with your color combinations. So let's take a close-up look at some of these spin cycle color palettes and see what kind of craziness we can come up with. Here is the Quadrangle Spires. This center section is what you do first, but you compose this center section with 4 little triangles. So it's composed of the first one right here, section 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to cast on with an I-cord tail. There's links in the pattern, in the PDF pattern, there's links to the construction techniques, like how to do this I-cord cast on with the main color. So this is what you do first, and we're going to hide that cast on later when we do one seam technique, actually. So you do section 1, you cast on and you bind off and you knit, bind off and you knit, bind off, and after section 1 you pick up to go this way, and then you pick up to go this way to make the 3rd triangle, and you pick up to do the 4th and final quadrangle. And after you do this 4th quadrangle, there's going to be a gap from here to here, and there's one seam actually in this pattern. You seam this 4th edge to the 1st cast on edge right here. Now each of these quadrangles is knit with 1 spin cycle colorway. These were the similar colors that I used for my sample. Westwool Bicycle in the Mariniere colorway. It's a really dark navy, like almost a black. It's like a soft black blue. That's the main color, 3 skeins, and 6 skeins of spin cycle make this big schlenket. I chose 6 different colorways in a jewel toned color family for my sample. So you can choose one skein of 6 different colors for your Quadrangle Spires. Or if you want to simplify things, you could get 6 skeins of just one color and then make a more simplified version. But it's more fun to have 6 single skeins because you get these melting, fun color interactions that give you motivation to see what color is going to happen next. So sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 each feature a different spin cycle colorway. So you're going to use the main color with contrast color 1, and then contrast color 2 for section 2, a new contrast color, new contrast color. Now you're not going to use all of this yarn for this little triangle section. You're going to have leftovers of all 4 colors. So all 4 of these colors plus your other 2 skeins are going to be knit for the spires when you pick up for sections 5 and 6. What I did for my sections 5 and 6, I wanted to make them asymmetrical. So you can see on this half of the shawl, it's more blue and green, and this half of the shawl was more pink and purple, with a little bit of blue as well. But I wanted asymmetrical spires, so I put my more blue and green skeins for one section, like section 5, and section 6, you could focus on the other colors. So I listed exactly how many ridges I did with each color, but I'd encourage you to experiment, and you could mix it up. You could do a little bit of this color, a little bit of that one, a little bit of this one, and you could repeat the cycle for these big spire wingtips. Or you could just knit with your leftover yarn until it's done, and then continue with the next color until it's done, and just knit as long as you can. And you can always bind off early. So if you want to make this shawl shorter, just bind off early for a shorter shawl, and you'll use a little bit less yarn. But the recommended yardage in the pattern will give you this big, long schlenket that's really cozy. I really like this size as like a blanket for the couch, so you can wrap it around your shoulders, and it's like a small lap blanket slash shawl or schlenket. And then over here we have the blues and greens. So this was really easy because you don't have to count your rows. You just knit with the yarn until it runs out. And sometimes the interaction from one color to the next will be really smooth. These are both similar colors, but what if you use this color and then you skip ahead to a blue and purple colorway? They're not going to match exactly, and then you might get instances like this, where it goes from light to dark, and that's totally fine. It's just a lesson in letting go and letting the yarn do the work for you. So don't try to control the color progression too much. I think it works best just to knit till you run out of yarn for sections 5 and 6, and then continue to the next color. If you want to organize your colors a little bit more strategically and you want to make matching spires, you just would need to weigh your yarn. So whatever yarn you use for this spire wingtip, if you want to use all of your colors for that wingtip, make sure you save the exact same yardage that you used here so that you have enough yardage for your other wingtip. So don't make this wingtip super, super long and then you only have enough to do a little short wingtip. So save half of your yarn for this wingtip and the other half for this. But that's why I divided it and used 3 colors for this, 3 colors for that, and then I knew I wouldn't run out of yardage for my wingtips. So if you want to put together a kit, I recommend getting fingering weight yarn for your color palette. I used a non-superwash wool to emphasize those crisp structural stitches, but you could use a superwash singles yarn or any fingering weight yarn that you like, of 3 skeins for the main color. And I find that a solid really grounds the fabric and anchors those painterly, marled, splashy yarns. So 3 skeins for the main color, and then you could focus on a color palette, like these beautiful teals and greens. So this one has some really light colors, and I would maybe use each of these light colors for the quadrangle in the center, and then continue the light colors for the spires, and finish your spires with a jewel tone spire tip. I think that would look really cool. And I put this teal together in our Norway colorway in Westwool Bicycle for this kit. So all of these kits are available at Stephen and Penelope. If we sell out of these kits, we'll bring them back in the future, but you can always email us if you want a custom color palette put together. because a more rainbow, splashy, random color choice I think would look really amazing. Maybe take the most punchy colorways for the center quadrangle to focus those strong colorways in the center of the shawl, and then use those other colors for the spires. And this is just going to make a beautiful melting painterly rainbow. I put a dark gray main color with these rainbow spin cycles. This is our canal house, dark gray. Really solid and gives you a graphic frame with those bright contrast colors. This one's a harmonious example in the pink territory, so you might want to do really light colors. When in doubt, when I'm choosing my contrast colors, it's nice to stick in a color family, and then you know the colors are going to harmonize. So I chose these pinks and purple tones from light to dark. A little bit of yellow and pink into juicy, saturated pink, and finishing with a dramatic punch. I think that would be really stunning. And maybe these four for the quadrangle, or if you want a more punchy central focus to your shawl, you could choose the more punchy color pops for your contrast colors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you have a couple bonus colors for your spires. But 300 grams for the main color and 300 grams for the contrast colors. Spin cycle comes in 50 gram skeins, so 2 of these equals 1 of these. 300 grams and 300 grams. This final palette I am just drooling over because it is so saturated, and I love these fiery oranges against the deep purple. This is our dark aubergine colorway, the aubergine purple in West Wool. So when in doubt, I usually do a dark frame because that gives you that graphic punch, really strong main color columns, and emphasizes the architecture of the shawl. But if you want a bit lighter, you could choose a lighter main color. I think that would be really nice and sweet. But that's not me today. I'm more dramatic today. I want this bold main color. And it fades from light into dark, blues into oranges and reds and deep shadowy tones. So this is a really nice color palette to choose kind of random colors. You don't have to be too matchy-matchy, but put them from light to dark. And contrast color 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your bonus contrast colors. But follow the pattern and feel free to use the colors in any order that you like to make your own customized color creation. Well, I cannot wait to see what you do with this pattern. It is a really customizable one with that main color and all the contrasting painterly color accents. So you just need 3 skeins of that main color, and then what are you going to do for the contrast colors? Are you going to choose 6 different spin cycle colors? Or you could do 5 or 6 skeins of just the same spin cycle color? Or dive into your stash. I could totally see a version of this knit with mini skeins or leftover sock yarns or put some mohair stripes in it. So remember that my patterns are just a guideline. You don't have to do them exactly as I do, but you got to make it better, okay? So share all of those works in progress on Instagram with hashtag WestKnits, and we can inspire each other with our different color palettes. And if you need help picking out a palette, we're always happy to make some custom palettes with any types of yarn that we carry at Stephen and Penelope. So feel free to send us an email at info@stephenandpenelope.com, and we're happy to make a custom color palette for you. And I can't wait to see what you do with this pattern. So I'll see you in the next video.